Right, so the libraries are kind of simple, but also somewhat complicated. If you imagine a picture of a library, this might be something that has come to mind. A simple area of books and education, or something like this, where people can learn and grow. But really, classically, the definition of library has been a collection of books for use by the public and has been literally defined by Latin roots to mean book and collection of books. And there are several meanings beyond this definition. And they can be perceived in several ways. There's the literal informative sense, where libraries are plainly sources of information, a place of resources accessible to the public, and a structure for archivism and the distribution of published work. One of the main roles of a library is to sustain and preserve historical information, as well publicize and circulate new information. Information is essentially data and knowledge that we understand. And today, information is kind of a currency, and it has become more relevant now than ever. Education is based on information and knowledge, and it has been able to fuel progress, which can be found technically, such as medically, mechanically, and in exploration. It can also be found socially, which is more perceived by the individual, which can be found in respect and diligence towards each other and interactively. And it can also be found creatively through the inspiration and personal interests we find. And libraries serve the purpose to spread this information and preserve it, as mentioned before. So there's two major transitions that have occurred within libraries. The first one is the physical environment, which basically focuses on the available media that is in libraries. This may include the books, as mentioned before, or the other forms of media that they have present, and the platforms that are used for libraries. And this refers to the physical libraries, which contain the available media, and it also contains the online databases that are now used. And that is the one that I plan on focusing on now. So yeah, essentially, for the first definition of the physical environment, we imagine books, but really libraries contain much more media than that, and some of those include audio, movies, and other historical documents, and it has also developed into electronic formats of these forms of media. So yeah, back to this picture again, we can see the transformation. This is the, I guess, classical version of a library that one may imagine, but it has been modified into something more like this, where it's more technological and focused on, I guess, the interactive media on computers. On the platforms that we use, it has changed mostly from physical libraries to online databases, and these have changed most likely to technological and social structures that have developed over time. For example, the popularization of the internet throughout the early 90s and as well as the 80s. It has encouraged this sort of change. And it is important to note that physical libraries do still exist, obviously, but online databases are sort of a branch off of them that can exist with and without physical libraries. Some of the forms of the advanced library, which are the online or digital sources, I have listed here. Most of them host ebooks, web pages, and research papers, and a lot of printed documents have also been published online to suit this new format that is more common today. These are some of the logos that we may recognize of these formats. These are basically a bunch of databases, hosts, or catalogs that have the same library functionality in that they preserve information and are able to share and distribute information. Since they are online, they are usually easier to access, which goes into the limitations that may come from both of them. With consideration to the transformation of the two types of library, which are physical and digital, both have several respective and shared benefits and limitations. Some of the limitations in physical libraries include the availability of some sources, as some objects may not be physically available at one time. There's also the issue of manual browsing, which may be time-consuming at some points. And of course, there's material care, which relies on the user to take care of the materials that are borrowed or that are referred to make sure they can be used again and still as a solid source of information. Online libraries also have their limitations. One of the most prominent ones is that they're not always open or open access. You might not be able to access everything in an online library or a database. Some of the examples that I listed here, such as JSTOR and Scopus, are research paper hosts, or that's what they mostly host. And a lot of those you have to either pay for or have a university login in order to access. So they do still share the information as necessary and as a library may require, but they have more limitation on them. Additionally, there's not the physical community or environment that you may have in a physical library. So a quiet environment where you could be focused on the information that you're trying to obtain is not there. And to have an online library, you also must have access to the internet and being online. So you will need the required technology in order to get onto the library. So to solve this is somewhat what we have already done. Not exactly consciously, but it's the combination of both the online and the physical libraries. This basically gives us the broadest selection of media possible because you have both the content that is online and both that is in text. You have the physical environment that is not present in online but is present in the physical. And you have access to the technology most often in physical libraries because they have been adapted, as mentioned before, in their environment to have more computers and more technology intertwined. So the impact on information essentially is how information has changed in value, quality, and traffic based on the prevalence of it, I suppose. So it's easier to access information since there's more access to online communities and the libraries online. So sometimes the quality of the information may not be as good because of the substantial amount of information that is present. Also, the value of information has kind of gone up because it's more present in what we view online. So back to the classical definition of library, we can see how all of these sort of relate to the idea of having information, obtaining information, and being able to share it. But it's not by the same standards as it may have been before. So we can go back to we can go into the importance of education, which inversely is also information, and we can view the progress technologically, socially, and creatively still through the same ways that we have in, I guess, less advanced libraries, but they're still present there. And yeah, it's essentially a reflection on how libraries have changed over time. So yeah.